So if you guys don't mind, I don't know if we're going to get more people, so I might as well just kick it off with the four of us. Lourdes, you're on mute. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, I didn't see Lourdes
Yeah, I was
there.
just listening. Hi, guys. I'm Lourdes.
Hi, Lourdes.
Sorry, I'm not showing my face today. It's just kind of having a low day at home.
Cool.
I'm glad you're here.
So I just want to kind of kick things off and say, like, this is going to be our first discussion for the Freethinker Institute, and we're going to have these once a month and talk about a different one of the 5 intentions for each one. And this one is about self-improvement. So I'm going to start off with like a little couple of minutes of sort of my perspective on self-improvement, along with some of the questions that may come up when someone thinks about self-improvement. And then, we'll open it up for discussion after that. But maybe we can first go around and just do introductions. I know you guys started to do that, but maybe we can do that now just because I'm going to start the recording at the beginning of this conversation. So I'll start myself. My name's Garrett. I mean, you all know me, but for the purposes of the background, I'm basically starting the Freethinker Institute to help increase happiness and minimize harm. I'm a technologist by background and philosopher by hobby, and just trying to do my part to make the world a better place. So that's my brief intro. Maybe just going from left to right on my screen. Daniel, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to see the world a better place too. And it looks like we're going in the opposite direction. But anyway, I try my little bit. I don't have any great pretensions of being able, it's hard enough to change our own lives. So I have a diminished expectation when it comes to changing other people's lives. But I just want to live my life as sincerely and as caringly as I can. Great.
And do you want to share a little bit of your background?
Well, I come from a Jewish background. And as I was telling Greg, I had experienced a lot of anti-Semitism growing up. And it seemed like I was always alone and I didn't have any place to go to process what I was going through. And so there was a bunch of them. And so the only thing I knew how to do was to hate. And hatred became so intense with me that I really felt that, hate to say it, but I didn't grow up among Blacks or any other racial group. And so I really felt for a while that whites had a different odor. Hatred can do that to you. Now, the Lord has brought me a long way. And so I'm married to a Gentile woman now for almost 32 years.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. Greg,
Sure.
Do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Greg Lopez. I guess I know Garrett through philosophy of various sorts. I think I'm here. I am somewhat in the Stoic world currently. I practice both Theravadan or maybe more early Buddhism, but also Stoicism as well. And I got into Stoicism a while ago after seeing its connection to CBT. I was the president of a nonprofit that taught form of cognitive behavior therapy to people with addictive behaviors, and saw the connection, had an underlying interest in philosophy, and took it from there. And I think Stoicism is useful in terms of happiness, in that it focuses on what one can ultimately control and also makes people resilient. And I think when taught well and properly, it places an emphasis on ethics over personal comfort as well. So I'm just here to learn about what other people's perspectives are, but that is my background.
Great, thanks, Greg. Lourdes, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Lourdes Cuello, and I'm originally from Belize, Central America. And I grew up in the U.S. I grew up in New York and Miami, Florida. So I grew up in a community of different sorts. I was always that nerdy girl that was just light enough to be kind of considered white, but then just not by the Black people or darker Hispanic, and then by the white Hispanics or the white people. I was never white enough. So I kind of grew up with people pulling my hair because I didn't understand, or my full lips, or just name calling. Um, and I just kind of stuck to myself. I read a lot. I had an awesome stepfather who taught me chess, and he was a white man. And he just kind of sat me down. We spent a lot of Saturdays together, horseback riding, and he just taught me how to just think outside the box and not let people, whatever they say, um, make me feel bad. I remember our neighbors thought that my mother was his maid. So I grew up with that. And when I lived in Florida, my friends, they had pools, and I was never allowed to go in the pool because of my hair or whatever color. So they always did that when I was never around. But I always knew that. And I grew up with a little bit of bullying, but I had a cousin and a brother that was just really bigger than everybody else, that, excuse my language, but would kick anyone's ass if they mess with me. So I kind of was okay to, and let it be known that if you touch my sister or my cousin, I'm coming for you. So I was kind of protected in that sense. But, people find ways to make you feel awful. I never really took it personally. I just didn't understand why people acted that way. But I always thought it was a defect within them. And I have a son, and he's curly hair like me, just full curls. And his girlfriend's Italian, and he's got like a great group of friends that they're just they're my son's 21, so he's had these 10 friends since he was, I don't know, 6. And I love hearing their conversations. They're not the typical teenage kids. They actually build stuff together. They spend a lot of time together, and they actually talk about a lot of different things. So when I tend to get um narrow-minded, my son reminds me that the world isn't this way. Like, he's like, Mom, you have to really understand people have feelings, and just because you think a certain way, they don't. So I wanted to just sit down and learn from other people. I am a Christian. I do believe in the Bible, but I also believe that it's not the Bible itself, because people like to use the Bible as this is what you're supposed to do. I think it's a relationship with God, and that's the purpose of having the Bible. But I also believe in spirituality, which is something Christianity kind of deflects from. So I also believe in manifestation, and I think for me, it's what's right for me in my life. And I'm open to understanding a lot of people. I never mentioned this, Garrett, but my son has a girlfriend for 4 years, but he just recently let me know that he's transgender, and it was a big wake up for me. So just hearing that, and going through the steps with him and trying to understand what that means for him has opened my eyes up to a lot of different understanding in a lot of different areas of how people are. So I'm just here to learn and just understand, and just I want to be in a cohesive group that we are allowed, like free thinkers, that we are allowed to have different opinions, but also understand each other's perspectives.
Yep, great. And that's exactly what we want. And it sounds like like you were ahead when you were younger of where I am now about not taking things personally. I still take things personally that I shouldn't, and realizing that a lot of the negativity that comes towards us is really the projection of the other person is something that's taken me until this year, well, really last year, to figure out. And I just, as soon as I realized that, I started seeing how much people project, and it's been fascinating. But I want to give kind of a quick overview of sort of my take on personal development, since that's the topic of the day, but a lot of us have touched on it even in our intros, which is great. And I just want to kind of put forth, what I've laid out as one of the intentions, which is self-improvement. And really it's about self-improvement around physical, intellectual, philosophical, emotional, and spiritual, which are, a lot of important aspects of life. And the other thing I put in there is about, we all want to be treated with respect, so we should always treat others with respect and encourage others to treat us with respect. And I think that that is really the cornerstone of the Freethinker Institute. It's the only mandatory rule, which is to be respectful. Everybody has to be respectful, because I really feel like unless we're respectful, our minds aren't open and we get into emotional reactions and frustrations and verbal escalations, verbal arms escalations. And so I really want to keep everything, in the Freethinker Institute very polite, so that we can have a level of trust and comfort with the people that we interact with. Um, so talking a little bit more about self-improvement, one of the questions people ask is like, why should I focus on self-improvement? And if we simply ask ourselves, are we perfect? I think we should be able to easily admit that we're not perfect. And while we may never achieve perfection, isn't perfection a great thing to strive for, which speaks to the Stoic sage, which is this concept of perfection that people should strive for but never expect to achieve, which I think also takes in a little bit of Buddhism, which is don't be disappointed if you haven't arrived at the end goal, which are both favorites of mine. And I like Christianity too. But the other thing is, some people say, well, I'm told that I shouldn't let anyone change me. And if I shouldn't let anyone change me, why should I let the Freethinker Institute help me with my self-improvement, right? That's a natural question someone might ask. And my response to that would be that there are sort of two ways to interpret that don't let people change me. The first one I'm going to say is what I think is the right way to interpret it, which is you shouldn't have people change your core values. The core of who you are as a human being and what makes you you should not be something that's changed. They're your core values and the things that you think are the most important in life that are not about that are really innate to who you are as a human being. Even knowing what those are is hard, and part of what we want to do at the Freethinker Institute is help people understand what their core values are and what their core, the essence of who we are is, the things that you shouldn't change about yourself. But then the second part is out of the things that are not core beliefs, but more about how do we interact with other people. And there's always better ways to interact with other people to be more successful and more encouraging and more positive. Those are things that we can improve on. And those are things that we should work on improving on. The other way to interpret that is that, we shouldn't have anyone help point out our mistakes to make us a better person. And clearly that's not a good idea, because if you have a warm, open-minded, altruistic group of people, which is what the Freethinker Institute is, to help you be a better person and maximize happiness and minimize harm, I mean, what bad could come of that? Right? That's only a way of improving ourselves. And from a Stoic perspective, it's improving, doing what's in our control to improve ourselves, which then will increase our sphere of influence, which will let us improve other people's lives. That's really the way that I look at the dichotomy of control is, do what's in our control to improve our lives so that we can then help others altruistically to create justice. Not to harp too much on Stoicism, but Greg's taught me well, I think. And Greg's one of the people that got me into Stoicism, actually. So I would just say, don't let anyone change who you are, but do let us help you be the best you. And that's kind of the perspective that I have on, should people should we allow people to change us, quote unquote. And so the other thing is, how can self-improvement help me? I think it helps people be the best version of themselves. We kind of touched on that, but it's basically, all aspects of life that we can become better at. And I'm going to talk about a couple of those. I'm actually going to say, like, I'm going to talk about a couple of the aspects that we can be better at. And then I'm just going to skip a few things, but then say, well, what if someone is disrespectful to me? I think my experience is that if someone in the Freethinker Institute is disrespectful, the best way to respond to that is to respond assuming that it's a miscommunication and that you may not have really understood what their true sentiment was. And rather than be upset at it and attack them back, which is what a lot of people respond emotionally, it's better to, and I know we won't with this group, but I just want to say it for the recording, is to say it's better to ask questions with Socratic dialogue and ask whether or not you understood what someone meant. Because most often when I find that I'm offended by what someone says, if I say, did you mean this? They almost never actually meant the thing that offended me. And actually, when I learn what they really meant, I'm like, oh, that's a good point. And so, we can get to much more respectful conversations by using Socratic method. I think Socrates was a true genius by coming up with that method, got himself into trouble with it because he was smarter than everyone else around him, but that's another story. ending in hemlock, which was unfortunate. So a couple of areas that I think are good to focus on in terms of self-improvement are, really understanding first who are you at your core, so that you know what you shouldn't change and what you shouldn't compromise. Um, and I think that's one thing, like I said, that we want to focus on helping people understand in the Freethinker Institute. Number two is having mature dialogue, which I alluded to just now. And then third is professional development. We're going to have a whole program on professional development and helping people get into, more, jobs that are more in line with their vision and dream, and that may pay better than current jobs that they're in. Maybe not always, but one of the Freethinker Institute goals is to help everybody make enough money that money no longer buys happiness. So we want to help people in professional development. And then fourth, there are a lot of life skills / types of intelligence. I haven't decided what to name them, but I've come up with a list of life skills and types of intelligence that people can practice at and get better at, that I think will help people in, if they choose the ones that are relevant to their field, to help people be better at their field. And so those are some areas of personal development. And that's kind of, when I brainstormed on personal development and thought about what I wanted to communicate to people, that was my interpretation of it. But I'd love to hear all of your interpretations of it, your reflections on that, whatever you guys want to share. Feel free to, now I just want to open it up to like discussion. That was my my spiel. What do people think?
Well, for one thing, I appreciate your nuanced approach, and it's apparent you thought deeply on the subject, which I respect. I'm probably, I guess the main way I would disagree, though, I tend to be more pessimistic about change, and a lot of that has come from my own life experience, because I don't know if I ever shared this with you before, Garrett, but I had seen 5 highly recommended PhD psychologists. And each one left me more screwed up than I was before. I changed lifestyle many times. I've been around the block a few times, tried just about everything I could out, trying to find happiness and peace of mind. And it all failed me. And the only thing that's really made a difference, somebody asked me the other day, well, what do you do about stress? I said, well, I take walks. I love taking walks. But really, the real thing I do about stress is recognizing I can't handle it. And there are a lot of things I can't handle. I have to call upon God. I have to give it to him and just entrust him with it. And he has rescued me so many times already that I'm really beginning to trust him, that he loves me. He's going to take care of me. That's my hope.
Yeah, and I think, that resonates with me, in that it resonates with what I know about Stoicism of, take what's outside of your control and don't let it make you unhappy. And you put that faith in God, whether you put it in God or whether you say it's simply out of my control, so I'm not going to worry about it. I personally would rather put my faith in God, but I do both. I say it's out of my control, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to leave it to God. So I kind of am with the Stoics and the Christians in that regard. But I think that that's great wisdom. And actually, Greg talked about how Stoicism makes people happy. And that's the Stoic wisdom that I think is truly the secret to happiness. If you only allow your happiness to be influenced by things in your control and you work hard, you're going to be happy. There's just no, and just that realization has made me like 10 times happier since I met Greg, actually. So I'm going to credit Greg with that. He doesn't know that I credit him with that, but I do. Since adopting that into my life and taking it into my heart, which Christians agree with this, it's the serenity prayer. God grant me to accept the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's really the Stoic wisdom repackaged by Niebuhr, 2,000 years later under Christianity, but it's just as wise under Christianity as it was under Stoicism. Except God's involved, which is cool. I like God. So,
Well, God was involved with the ancient Stoics too.
That's true, right? Actually, yeah. So you would know more about that than me, Greg. But
right. I mean, I'm personally a materialist or physicalist atheist, but the ancient Stoics did focus a lot on God. But I do share Daniel's possible pessimism, and I guess my comment is my main concern is that there's a difference between like creating a good thing and then people using the good thing and knowing about it and wanting to use it. So to use a dirty word, but it's semi-important, I'm concerned about like marketing to others. And we've discussed this previously one-on-one a little bit about like your strategy of kind of um, appealing to like more like wealthier people to start, but then branching out. So I think probably my main concern is like I've seen the pattern over and over again where the nice, interesting, sexy work is what's focused on, and then nobody picks up the sexy work because they don't care about it or they don't know about it. So like one example is in medicine, where I was interested in a long time of like medical inference and stuff like that. I'm trained as a pharmacist, and like getting good data out to people. But like the Cochrane, there are reviews that are very rigorous and get good data, and nobody cares. Like the practicing doctor will be 10 years behind on what the latest evidence suggests. And so we could create kind of something that could, even if it is useful for those who are involved in it, not enough people care or want to be involved in it. So I'm curious to hear what you, Garrett, as well as others, think of this kind of positioning, and to keep on using the dirty word marketing for the Freethinker Institute.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, we want to be useful to whoever we come in contact with. And I think this concept of self-improvement is step number one to being useful. And I'm the optimist in the room apparently, because you're both pessimistic. I'm very optimistic. So I'll try to make my optimism twice as strong as both of your pessimisms, and bring you over to the light side. But I do think, and maybe I'll use the Socratic method and ask both of you, do you agree that, or do you think that there's no point in teaching self-improvement, or do you think that there is value in teaching self-improvement? And for the people we come into contact with, we can teach them the secrets of, you know, Christian wisdom, Stoic wisdom, and all the other wisdom. You know, I had unfortunately the well, Greg kind of represents Buddhist. I had a former Buddhist monk that was going to come but wasn't able to make it, and Muslim friend that was going to come but couldn't make it. But you know, taking the wisdom from all places, you know, all sources of wisdom, and teaching people how to improve themselves with the wisdom from all aspects of life in the world, I think is a really valuable thing. And I'm hopeful that we can help, you know, anyone that we can. And like I said, actually, I'm kind of pivoting, Greg, you know, from what we talked about to more just helping people from a career perspective and doing professional services with a complement of, you know, personal development, professional development with a complement of personal development. And so we'll probably start off doing more professional development type stuff, but then, you know, I want to, you know, grow the personal development type stuff as well. So does that make sense?
It does, though then the previous caveat, the previous model of appealing to wealthier people first and then poorer people later in order to get the wealthier people on board to get more resources wouldn't quite hold then. And if you're focusing on professional development for people who are already pretty well developed, then that is probably low marginal utility in my view. If we could teach professional development to people who need it, then the marketing question, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's about people that need it. It's like, okay, basically, if you're not in a job that you're happy with and you want to figure out what your dream job is and get a valuable skill set in it, that's kind of what we're focusing on. And so okay, the one that I have the deepest connections with is in development. So if someone wants to be a developer, they want to be in manual QA, or they want to be an automation QA, you know, QA automation, like we have like a whole host of jobs that we can teach people in. And, you know, we'll teach people what these jobs do and then see if they want to get, you know, dabble in them and get more knowledge in them. But, you know, part of what will make people successful is that they, you know, focus on self-improvement, which is why, you know, this chat is about self-improvement, because without self-improvement, you don't get that professional development, right? You have to be willing to improve yourself. And if you're improving yourself professionally and personally at the same time, you're going to improve yourself faster than if you're just focusing on just professional.
So I do love the idea. this nonprofit. I do have two things. They're not questions, they're just ideas. So I have just finished recently, about a year ago, network engineering course. And one of the things that always pops up to me when we talk about self-improvement is two main things. Um, I don't think a lot of people understand, or I see people start and don't finish, is comparing themselves to others. If you want to self-improve, we should always just, like, I don't compare myself. And it's not anything of just being arrogant. It's just, I've learned a long time ago, God has taught me, like, my path is my path. And I cannot, we all have different ways of getting to where we got to go. And I just follow my path. It might be slower than the rest. But again, for me, the finish line is retirement. I always tell my friends, it doesn't matter when I'm going to retire. That's my finish line. I don't care how slow or how fast I am ahead of anybody else, because what is for Garrett, I can never have. And what's for me, Garrett can never have. So why am I going to worry about Garrett's lane when I can worry about Lourdes' lane? Because that's the only way I can keep my eye on what's going on with me, and then actually commit to self-improving. And then also, it's a phrase I always think about, and I see this world is that is wanting and doing are two different things. You may want to do something all you want, but no one starts it or you don't finish it, right? So then there's a doing actually within the wanting that gets us there. So I don't know if that makes sense, because I know a lot of people, we can talk about a lot of different things, and I'm sure people that will, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And they've said that for like 10 years. And you're like, well, if you, in my mind, if you actually, had done something in the 10 years, because I believe like 3 years, if I take this course for 3 years, right? So if I actually sit down and do it for 3 years, in that 3 years, it's going to go by either way. So why don't I just do something about it and get on that path? Because I think a lot of, especially Americans, we love to start things, but then when we get to that, it's too hard, or I don't want to like commit, then it's like working out or something. We don't really finish it because I don't know, I think there's a gap between the wanting and the doing and the motivation behind it. If that makes sense.
You hit on so many so important things there, Lourdes. The first one I want to mention is that most people are unhappy because they're playing this keep up with the Joneses thing. And I have a paper on self-worth, and it basically agrees with you 110%, which is that your self-worth should only be focused on your desire to do good and your level of effort towards doing good. And if your intentions are good and you're trying hard, you should be very happy with yourself no matter where you land. And I think that would solve a lot of people's self-worth problems. And I've met a lot of people with self-worth and coached them around that, with self-worth problems and coached them around that. And then forget the other thing you said I wanted to comment on, but that's why I need to take notes, but I'm trying to pay attention.
Of the wanting and doing.
Oh yeah, the wanting and doing. Thank you. You're exactly right. So I have read dozens of books on leadership, and the number one indicator of whether or not someone will be successful or not is persistence. It's how hard you try. There's a book called Grit. The whole book is about just that. If you try hard, you will eventually be successful. You just have to keep trying hard. And if something doesn't work out, you try hard at the next thing. And so I think, so important that, in terms of self-improvement, we think about, we need to try hard to do the right thing. And if we do try hard to do the right thing, that's all we can expect of ourselves, and we should be happy with it. And I do want to give Jess and Saif the chance to join, maybe give a little bit about your backgrounds. I'm going to go left to right and start with Jess. So welcome, Jess and Saif. Thanks for making it.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I just able to park my car and join in.
Great. Well, thanks. And Jess, if I can do a quick background of my knowledge of your background. Jess was a Buddhist monk for a good period of time, and so has great knowledge of Theravada Buddhism. And Saif, if you could give a quick background for you, and just to so that everybody knows.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to join. I'm just always exploring. I know Garrett from undergrad, so I know exactly what his background is. For me, yeah, I mean, I just like to explore new topics and better myself. So this seemed like a great opportunity.
Cool. And Saif, we also covered religion, so I'll just mention that you're Muslim. And so, I said like one of
Yes.
my goals of this organization is to bring wisdom from all the different paths of wisdom, and I consider every religion a different source of wisdom. And I have a paper on religion where I say basically that I think the best approach for me for religion, and that I recommend for people who don't already have a religion that they're happy with, and even for people who do, quite frankly, is learn from all religions. Why not, learn the wisdom from all religions? You can have yours, but you can still learn from others. And so I think it's helpful to learn from all religious teachings.
Mhm.
So we were just talking about our concepts of sort of why self-improvement is important. And, we covered a little bit, Lourdes just shared some stuff that I was reflecting on about why self-improvement is important to each of us and sort of our perspective on self-improvement. So if either of you want to jump in, feel free. If anyone else has stuff they want to share, feel free.
I have I have a slightly different take on self-improvement.
Yeah,
Of course, self-improvement is very biblical. I mean, there's a lot in the Bible about, you know, giving to other people, putting their needs in front of your own. And I certainly want to grow in that area. But the way I see it is that self-improvement is not the way up, but actually the way down. Because when we try to self-improve ourselves, we face a lot of disappointments. And I know that's been the case for me. And it's humbled me. It's humbled me greatly. And the humbling process is a real valuable thing because it helps us to, not look down on other people, but to just trust not in ourselves, but to trust in God, to get that weight off our own shoulders and to just put it on the shoulders of somebody who can't shoulder it.
Daniel, I love that comment you just made. Because I totally understand it, but I also think for me, self-improvement, especially in the Bible context as a Christian, I like to look at it like this. It's like when we prune a tree, like, you feel naked and you're just gonna look naked. So like God kind of like he's pruning us, right? When he's self-improving because we need to grow, we need to cut out all the bad stuff. Or it's sort of like cultivating soil. And when you're cultivating soil, if you're digging it up, right? So for me, it's like when I go through I call it just God calling me out into deeper waters. And it's painful because what we're doing is God is actually, he's actually cultivating me, or he's just, his hands are all in my soil and I don't like it because it makes me feel uncomfortable. So when he calls me out into deeper waters, I'm like, can I really swim this far or this deep? Or it's cold out here and I don't understand this. It's kind of like fear sets in, right? And then there's a place where for me where faith and fear, just faith takes over that fear. But I think you should generally, when you're self-improving, there should be some kind of uncomfortableness, because that's how we grow. That's how anything grows, if that makes sense.
Sure it does.
yeah. I actually have a concept that I learned in undergrad in a leadership class that stuck with me because I loved it, which is, you have two circles. Inside the inner circle is your comfort zone where you're comfortable and you're not learning, growing, and developing. Outside the outer circle is the danger zone where you're like scared as hell and you're not learning, growing, and developing. You're just afraid. In between those two, you're uncomfortable, but you're growing and developing. And as you stay in your growth zone, is what I call it, in between those two, you are uncomfortable. I think it's important to not be disappointed in yourself, Daniel, because that uncomfortableness doesn't have to lead to disappointment. And that's one of the things that I've learned from Buddhism is to avoid, feeling disappointed. If you're trying your best to do if you're trying your best, don't be disappointed with it. Be proud of doing your best. And if you stay in that growth zone, your comfort zone gets bigger, and the things that used to make you uncomfortable are now comfortable. And now your danger zone gets bigger too. And so now the things that used to be dangerous are now in your growth zone. And so in doing that, we increase our sphere of influence and grow, but we only do it if we force ourselves to be uncomfortable, but not afraid.
Well, we both agree in the necessity for discomfort. Without discomfort, we don't grow.
Yeah.
And so we agree there. But, my way up, again, has been the way down, recognizing that, you know, I can do very, very little. And this is going to sound strange to you, maybe to other people too, that I don't believe in myself anymore. I don't want to believe in myself because I found that as soon as I start believing in myself, I start feeling very elated and God pulls the rug out from underneath me. And I found conversely that when I enter into a situation where I feel I can't handle this at all, I'm totally out of my league. And all I can do is trust in God that somehow he's going to pick up the ball. He does. He does. My experience has been very different in that regards.
Would you mind? Can I add something from a Buddhist perspective?
Please.
Yes. Before I share the idea of what I'm going to say, there must be a root where this idea comes from. Okay. So this is only for Buddhism only. And it's that we are born these days because we have done a karma or a sin. Because if we don't have sin, we're no longer going to get born. So we are born because of our sin. And sometimes when we do something and then there are some obstacles or we don't achieve something or we lose confidence. And for Buddhism, this is nothing to do with God. It is from our karma that we have done even from past life or this life. And it is closing our path. So with our own karma, there is no one can fix it only by ourselves. So we have to face the challenges that we made for our own self and move forward to overcome it. And by overcoming it, it means we are doing good merit, become a better person. So we don't cause a new negative karma, but we cause a new positive karma, which is a positive energy that will lead our way to nirvana. And why nirvana comes to play into this? It means in Buddhism, it is believed that we have been reborn so many cycles, even more 100,000 times. And why we keep reborn again and again? Because our sin, we keep creating a new sin, and then it doesn't balance well with our positive ones, which is merit and the positive energy we have. So we keep borning. If we continue to develop ourselves according to Buddhism scripture, it means we keep doing good things according to what the Lord tell us. And once we're able to cleanse our spirit, it will come to a time that we no longer have to be rebirthed again. But we cannot leave that to the hand of God. It is us who created, it is our own self to solve it. And that is why we keep developing ourselves. And there are many ways that we can develop ourselves, but the most simple method, I like to say this, the most simple way. The most simple method is always imagine that we will be able to die any second, anytime. We don't know when we're going to die. So there won't be a word for us to say to ourselves, I will do this later or I will do this tomorrow. We will always develop ourselves every single breath that we have because we don't know in a few seconds or tomorrow when are we going to die. So we're living with this present and do the best out of this moment. And that is also about.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that both Christianity and Buddhism will say we started from sin, right? Both Christianity and Buddhism will say we started from sin. It's interesting. Daniel's approach is you leave my fate in the hands of God and he makes it work. And the Buddhist approach that Jess is laying out is put my fate into my own hands and self-improve to get myself out of the situation I'm in. The latter resonates more with me, but part of what I think is beautiful about life is that we can all choose our own paths. And I believe that everybody needs to find their own path and the one that resonates best with them. I found that controlling my destiny makes me feel safer and more comfortable. Whereas, Daniel, it sounds like you felt better putting your trust in God, and that makes you happier. Like you tried to control your destiny and you felt like it made you unhappy, if I understood right. Did I understand that right?
Yeah, you did. Right. Right.
Yeah, agree.
So
Uh,
I
go ahead,
I
Lourdes.
I I actually agree with sort of both in this aspect as I love the Bible, but if you look at the Bible in every story, like they trusted God but they also had to do things. My favorite person in the Bible is King David, and I always look at it as, he was anointed as a young teen or something, right? But he didn't reach the throne until probably like in his 40s 50s, right? And there were so many things he had to do. They said that he played for King Saul and that he was a general in the army. So he didn't come from just being a shepherd boy. He had to like learn music, and then he had to grow up. He had to actually join the army and then actually just progress to be a general. And then he had to run away for like 3 years. And there was a whole bunch of stuff. And even with Abraham, and Sarah, like going out, and when God called them, everything, even Jesus, there was a time when they had to trust but also do things. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with feeling confident in your abilities, because I think that's something that that we all need to do to actually accomplish any goal. And I look at myself as God sets a goal for me. Thank you for that, and I'm grateful for it. But there are things I have to do, like I'm trying to learn software development. I can't say, okay, God, and nothing wrong with it, but I'm grateful for this opportunity because it's something that He brought me to. Now I ask myself and I ask God, what do I need to do to accomplish these goals? Because there are things that I have to do, even in my fear of it all. Like, I'm like, okay, you can fear it. And when I fear it, I'm like, okay, God, now you take over and you need to let me know that I can do this. And if I can learn this, and you open my mind to it. And then when He does, then I'm like, okay, I'm on the right path. That's how I follow it. That's how, but I also sit down and I also meditate, and try to understand that there is in the Bible, we say you reap what you sow, so it's like karma. So there are things that I know that I'm imperfect, and I know that that I sin for, and I'm like, okay, now I have to be held accountable. And I know when I'm in a certain place, and God says, like, you need to do something you don't want to do, or if I've done something to hurt somebody, and I don't want to apologize, or I want to deflect from it, then I have to actually humble myself and say, okay, fine. How is this gonna? What kind of negativity are you bringing into your life? Right? You're pushing this out into the universe, and then you don't like the result that you created, that I created, right? So then how do I fix it? So then I have to actually go back and say, okay, I'm sorry. Even if they don't take it, but I have to understand or forgive people that have hurt me, right? And be like, okay, fine. I can't take offense to that, because that's going to eat up too much of my energy and my time just ruminating and thinking about this one thing this person did to me. They're not, for me, no one's worth my blessings. That's what I always say. You're not worth my blessing. You're not worth that blessing from God that I'm going to get. So I need to forgive you. That's how powerful that one statement to me is.
Yeah, and if I may have my scripture wrong, you guys know it better than me, Daniel and Lourdes, but I thought that there was something in the Bible that said God helps those who help themselves. Is that
No,
not
it's not.
true?
No, that's not
Okay.
a scripture.
I wasn't sure if that was scripture or if that was just something people say, but I'm curious, Saif, if you have any opinions you want to share, maybe on the Muslim perspective of all this, or your own personal perspective, either one or both.
Yeah, I don't know about the Muslim perspective, but certainly personal perspective. Well, I mean, there is a religious perspective about tying the camel, which is a pretty geographic. I don't know if you've heard of this saying in the West. So there's this saying that put your faith in God, but you still have to tie the camel, right? It's not like, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna
I'm
chill
just
out
gonna hope
here.
the camel stays there, and then
Yeah.
while your camels go away, and suddenly your camel this, and then you can't get a
So
race, and
yeah,
Like,
so
downhill from there.
there's this there's a saying, tie the camel, and then obviously, like, if you become really deep into it, then you're like, well, how much do you have to tie the camel, how many ropes, like how tight do you have to make it, and Unfortunately, it can be a fuzzy area, right? And that's where I think some people struggle, right? So on one hand, there's a common perspective, when I worked in New York, right, of people who try to achieve the number, right? This magical amount of money they need where, for the rest of their life, they don't have to do anything and they have to be completely free. And that was a bit of an extreme, deterministic approach, right? Like, I know exactly how much I need for the rest of my life. I know what my situation is going to be. And then there's another perspective where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to do something. I'm going to educate myself, and I'm going to leave the rest to God, right? And then there's a variety of sort of a spectrum in the middle where there are people who work hard, there are people who work really hard, there are people who are improving themselves and balancing that hard work. And I don't know if there is one winning perspective there, but obviously either of those two extremes are obviously wrong, right? So you obviously have to get to the point where you tie the camel. You obviously cannot tie the camel so well that you've planned out the rest of the 80 years of your life and have this sort of magic number where
you can't
right?
untie the camel anymore. The camel's stuck forever.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I think a lot of it is about improvement, right? So I think the best perspective I've heard amongst friends is just make sure you don't mess up your brain, right? Whether it's with drugs or with lack of use or whatever, because really what you need to be doing is sharpening your brain. That is the tying the camel, right? Because everything else will follow, right? If you are sharpening your brains and improving your skills and being a better person and improving your community relationships. It's not just skills, right? It's social capital, right? It's passing favors on without necessarily any hope of getting it back. But there is that karma of, when you do that enough in society, things do come back, just by way of diffusion. So anyway, I mean, that's how I think of it. So my perspective is mostly don't mess up your brain.
I love that, and I wanted to mention, like, one of the goals of the Free Thinker Institute is for everyone to make enough money that money no longer buys happiness, which is about $75,000 USD per year. And I think if we could get the world in a position where everybody makes that amount of money, at that point it's teaching good philosophy that makes people happier, which we'll also do, by the way. But that's a very ambitious goal that won't happen in my lifetime, or probably 20 lifetimes after. But hopefully someday we can work towards that goal as an organization, because yes, I've met those people too that just chase money, and they may have $20 million, but it's just not enough for them because the guy next to them has 40 million and they're just not good enough until they get 40 million. The truth is, those people are just unhappy because they're never going to be wealthy enough, and they really need good philosophy.
Yeah, you have to also enjoy the ride.
What's that? Yeah,
you also have to enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
I think in this world we get caught up in a lot of you have to be doing something all the time. I think one of the things we need to remember is to rest, to actually rest and take time out. Like you said, don't mess up your brain on working too much. And I say that because I am at fault. So I'm a hospital IT, and I travel to different hospitals. And when I work per project, so when I work, I actually come in for 2 to 6 weeks at a time, and I work every day 12 hours. I work 7 to 7, 7 to 7, 7 to 7, 7. And it gets tiring. And some days, like in the third week, or somebody asks me, how are you doing? And my answer will be like, I'm here. Like that, my one goal is just to show up because that's all I can do. And so when I'm at home, I rest a lot. And I try not to get over doing things, so I can spend 14 hours on my computer. And that becomes too much, right? It's like, what are you doing? So I spent the last few days just staying off screens and just doing nothing but like reading and resting my body and my brain. I'm like, all right, you got to rest for the upcoming week. I felt bad. A cold just took me out for a little bit. And I was like, you know what? You need to just rest your mind, your body, and everything else, and reset. So in this world, I think we are always, like people say, when someone's doing it, you're like, do something, do something. Sometimes doing something is doing nothing, but just resting.
Yeah, I'd say there's a balance, right? We don't want to be lazy, but we also don't want to work so hard that we're no longer productive. And I will be honest, like I was applying for a job. I won't say which one, but it was a job. I won't say anything about it because I don't want to give it away for people that know my background. But I was applying for a job. I was going in with an interview with the VP. And there was a guy waking up on the couch, and I just kind of glanced over just a little bit, like, what is that? A guy waking up on the couch? And the VP noticed me look and said, "Oh, you know, sometimes people work all night over here and then they sleep in the office." And I work pretty damn hard. You know, I've worked 60 to 80-hour weeks my whole career, and now I work 80 to 100-hour weeks for the last 5 years since I have my own company. But I don't want to be in a situation where it's expected for me to stay in the office overnight because, you know, that's, you know, you need to give that much face time to the office. And when it comes to the point where you need to like be in the office a certain number of hours to prove how hard you're working, but you're no longer productive in those hours, then you're really doing it just for the motions. And that's not a healthy place to be either. And so I think there's a point at which I think working hard and being productive is good. But when you're pretending to work hard, or you're working hard to look like you're working hard, but you're really not productive because you're not well rested, that's not good. And that's my alarm to remind us that we're just at about 6 o'clock. So maybe we can go around the table just to get some final thoughts from each person about whether this was an interesting conversation. Did you learn anything? Anything that you want to leave people with that you would like to share? And we'll start with Daniel, Greg, Jess, Lourdes, and Saif. And I'll prompt people. So Daniel, you first.
Well, I think you've all said some very valuable things. And Lourdes, I wish, I can't even dream about, I'm such a workaholic, but I work for myself, so it's not bad. But I can't even dream of learning how to rest. But anyway, you know, what you all have said has helped me to, I guess, refine what I want to say. That my life, and I think is a life where it starts with God. And yes, if it sounded like I was minimizing our responsibility and our actions, I didn't mean to say that. But it's got to start by investing ourselves in God and knowing that He's with us, knowing that He loves us. If I am not defined by God, my value is not invested in Him, then my value is going to be vested in my accomplishments and what people think of me. And that is a form of slavery.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. And go ahead, Greg.
So yeah, I thought it was interesting to hear a whole bunch of different perspectives, and people were very eloquent in how they saw the worldview. And also, I appreciate your putting together such a diverse group of people, Garrett, as well. So I guess from the Stoic perspective, the ancient Stoic perspective would be that, yeah, to kind of trust in the rational unfolding of the universe, which they took to be God. The modern secular Stoic perspective, which is kind of the one I personally adhere to, is that focusing on things that are completely beyond your control is not particularly useful and bound to be disappointment, at least some of the time, by definition, since it's not within your control. And furthermore, there's the question of how useful those things are for personal development, and or for, I guess, for a satisfying life. Not necessarily a happy life is in the emotion, but whether it's a life worth living. And I think the Stoics make a decent case that it's focusing mostly on one's character and one's mind and one's social bonds is really what makes a life that's worth living. So I would translate the trust in God to a modern Stoic perspective to trust in being the best person you can be.
Great. Thanks, Greg. How about you, Jess?
Yeah, just a quick note. I've been teaching meditation these days. And one thing that there's a difference when we get a time out for ourselves, maybe 1 hour a day, and sit down and think things through, comparing to if we just sit down, just simply close our eyes and meditate. This is nothing to do with religion, but it's just for us to see our inner selves, inner spirit deeper. And I guarantee to many people who haven't tried this, you will see a very clearer picture of your life and many, many things when you start to meditate in every which way, doesn't matter. But you will see a clearer picture, a clearer path, a clearer meaning in a higher spirit within your own self. So for those who haven't tried, I encourage you to try it. Every day is important because our mind, like Garrett said, some people working so much in their efforts, many hours a day, and they are all toxicated by their own mind. So you need to clear this up by your own self, by clearing your mind and spirit, and you will see a lot clearer picture and purpose. Most important, the purpose of life. You will see very, very clear. I encourage everybody to try if you haven't.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Jess. Lourdes, do you want to go next?
Sure. Just very interesting conversation and just hearing everybody's different perspectives. Daniel, I just wanted to give you one thing, which is you said you don't know how to rest. So Psalms 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." And for me, that's rest, right? That is just, he says right there, be still, like do nothing, just that's rest. And in everything there's a season. Like when we plant anything, there's a time to just sit and grow and everything. I'm definitely going to take Justin, is it, up on that meditation and just, try to just see what that does for me. I'm definitely want to grow and hear more about what everyone thinks and how this grows, and just excited to see the growth in it. It's sort of like planting a seed and then watering it, watching it grow. So just excited.
Great. And it's Jess, by the way.
Oh, Jess, sorry.
Yeah. Saeed, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. Sorry I was late. I think the topic most interesting to me is where you draw the line on a lot of different topics, right? And this was a pretty interesting conversation because there is some balance between faith and effort. And there is a continuum between faith and effort and obsession. I love to hear these perspectives because I constantly wonder if I am drawing the line in the right place.
Yeah, and I think that questioning is great, and I'll give my 2 cents, and that's part of what we're here to do, is be peers, to learn from each other and figure out where to draw those lines. I just want to reiterate the let's always be polite. I think Confucius, taught to be as polite as possible, and I haven't found a reason to disagree with him yet. And I thought really hard about it, and I'm pretty good at loopholes, so I haven't found a good loophole to that where you'd be better off being less polite. And then I think it's important to know your core self. If people want help with that, feel free to reach out to me. I have a worksheet to help people with their core self and understand what it is, which Greg has seen. Anyone else that's interested in it, feel free to reach out to me. And then I think if people focus on improving themselves to the best of their ability, and then being happy with where they land, I think that's, a really good thing to strive for. And we want to help facilitate that for people in the Freethinker Institute. So really appreciate everybody's coming, and just want to thank everyone for joining. With that, I'm going to kind of close out the meeting, but I do want to ask everybody if we can, to set another time for us to meet next month. And because this time of day and day of week was good for people, I'm going to propose that we keep it. And suggest the night of the 14th of February as the next night to meet, if you guys are open to that. Is that a possibility for everyone?
Yes,
I would say Valentine's
Isn't that
Day.
Valentine's Day? I mean, I'm fine, but isn't that
for
Valentine's
Greg,
Day?
is another week better than that? Like the 21st?
Possibly, though 5 p.m. is getting a little sketchy for me, so I will have to be on a wait and see basis.
Okay. Would it be like, is your availability just bad in general, or should I send out a new doodle?
I personally prefer Doodle. It's bad in general, and I have to look at specific times in order to do it. But you don't necessarily have to lean on me either if other people have a specific thing that they could do. So
let me send out a new doodle, because I might broaden the group a little bit. I don't want to get more than 10 for sure. And I like a smaller group. This is actually the perfect size group for me, like, because everybody gets the chance to speak and we can understand each other's perspective better. When it starts to get to like 8, 9, or 10, or any more than 10 is just a nightmare, because, you know, it's like it's hard to have a continuous conversation. So I try to keep it, you know, the Romans said don't have more than 10 people talking at once in a group conversation. And I think that's a pretty good rule, 2,000 years old, but it's a pretty good rule of thumb even today with modern technology. So I'm going to try to keep it to under 10, but let me send out another doodle and see if that'll work. So I'll send that out shortly. But just want to thank you all for joining. This was, you know, I love conversations like this. This is why I'm doing the Freethinker Institute and why I've hosted philosophy meetups, which is how I've met several of you. And just want to thank you all for your contributions. Really appreciate it, and I'm sure other people will too. Is there anyone that has a problem with me posting this recording? I'm gonna like cut the beginning and the end out, but is there anyone that has a problem with me posting this recording on the website afterwards?
No.
All right, cool. Because I would like to do that. Like the goal is to give people a taste of what the Freethinker Institute is about. And so these meetings are kind of like, you know, you guys are like my favorite people, so I'm kind of inviting you to be like the, you know, my favorite philosophical people. I don't want to, you know, and I want to sort of show people what the Freethinker Institute is about and have examples of, you know, conversations like this that people can come to the website and listen to our conversation and be like, oh, if I get involved in this organization, I'll be able to have conversations like that. And you know, I think people will be impressed by the conversation that we all had, and would like to be a part of something like that. And I think we'll attract the right people by showing them examples of what we're looking for and what we're trying to do.
I think it's a great idea also because there are many kinds of belief of every single person, and you know, I think we have a beautiful mix of culture, belief, and styles here that can match either way to some of the people who are looking for something, and I think it's a great thing to do.
Thank you.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
I
concur.
did kind of attempt to have diversity. You know, Greg being a Stoic, Jess being a Buddhist, and Greg has Buddhist background as well. But then, you know, Daniel and Lourdes being Christian, and Saif being Muslim, and me being spiritual but not religious, but loving all religions, quite frankly. Having gone from a place where when I was younger I hated all religions, and now in a place that I love all religions. And Daniel, you're pretty damn convincing if you ask me, because you're the one. I told you this. But I'll tell other people. Daniel's the person that challenged me to think about whether or not morality could be objective, and he convinced me to convince myself that morality can be objective, which is actually led to me believing that maximizing happiness and minimizing harm is an objective moral, which is the whole foundation of the Freethinker Institute. So in some ways, Daniel, you're the seed that started all this. Yeah, so you know, it's been a long journey, but you know, I didn't think that it would be here now, and I don't know what's going to happen next year. All I know is I'm going to do the best I can to improve myself and help other people improve themselves. So thanks again, everybody. And I hope you all have a great night. And I will look forward to chatting with those who can make it to the next one.
Have a good one, guys.
Hey, thanks.
Bye.
Enjoy your
Thanks.
week.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
y'all.
Thank you, everyone. See ya.
Bye-bye.